She was a very outgoing person. Cashay was fabulous. She had a big heart. She loved children. She liked to have fun. She was always happy, and her life ended so soon. I just hope everybody get justice.
Around 9 a.m. on February 26, 2023, the city of Milwaukee was still immersed in the cold of late winter when a 911 call broke the silence. The dispatcher panicked. Smoke coming from the apartment on the second floor. The fire is spreading very quickly. Minutes later, the fire alarm and the flashing lights of fire trucks woke up the quiet neighborhood in fear. Security cameras around the neighborhood recorded thick black smoke billowing up and red flames shining through windows, an unusual scene no one expected to see on a Sunday morning. Inside the apartment was Cashay Henderson, 31, a transgender woman known to her friends and neighbors for her bright smile and her way of living life to the fullest. To the local LGBTQ+ community, she was not only a familiar face, but also a source of positive energy, always warming the atmosphere. But that morning, instead of the familiar laughter, Cashay's living space was engulfed in smoke and panic. People stood along the sidewalk, watching the firefighters try to control the raging fire. The sound of metal cracking and the smell of burning smoke filled the small street. A sense of unease crept into every gaze. Something more terrible than the fire was lurking in the ashes. Those who knew Cashay all had the same question. What really happened behind that closed door, just before the fire engulfed the entire apartment? The atmosphere of that winter morning will forever be a chilling memory for those who witnessed it, because they could not have imagined that tragedy had crept into their own neighborhood. And the unanswered question still lingers. What led to the fire and the tragic fate of Cashay Henderson? On the evening of February 25, 2023, Milwaukee was in the dead of winter. The streets were deserted, with only the yellow lights shining through the thin layer of snow that remained. In the silence, neighbors in the Northwest neighborhood saw a familiar sight: 31-year-old Cashay Henderson returning to her small second-floor apartment. To them, the sight was completely normal, as Cashay often came home late from meetings with friends. No one expected that it would be the last time they saw her alive. Not long after she entered the house, several nearby residents recalled hearing strange noises. The noises were intermittent, not lasting long, and quickly fell silent. Thinking they were just ordinary quarrels or collisions, no one paid much attention. These fleeting details were gradually forgotten until the incident occurred. Near dawn on February 26, a witness happened to see the silhouette of a man leaving the building. In the dim light of the street lamps, the face could not be clearly recognized, but the hurried, somewhat furtive gait left the image etched in his memory. At first, the witness did not think it was anything important, but just a few minutes later, everything changed. Thin wisps of smoke began to escape from the second-floor windows. At first, they were just wisps of smoke, but they quickly thickened and billowed upward. Soon, flames erupted from inside the house, flaring up fiercely. Cashay's apartment was bathed in a red glow that reflected down the alley, waking up the entire neighborhood. The fire spread with incredible speed, casting flickering lights across the walls. Residents of the building and nearby apartments ran out in panic. Some called 911 and screamed to wake their neighbors. The fire alarm rang out repeatedly, the sound of footsteps running on the cold snow mixed with shouts, creating an atmosphere of unprecedented chaos in this normally quiet neighborhood. Standing from the yard, many people helplessly looked up to the second floor, where the fire was growing bigger and bigger. In just a moment, the small apartment where they used to see Cashay smiling and waving was covered in black smoke and red flames. A feeling of fear mixed with shock crept into every gaze, because everything happened so fast, no one had time to react. The distant sound of fire sirens carried a faint hope, but for the onlookers, the minutes dragged on. They saw the reflection of the fire on each other's faces, the nervous gripping of hands, and the gasps of breath in the cold. A heavy atmosphere hung over the neighborhood. As dawn broke, the fire was still raging. Black smoke billowed high into the sky, and a strong, acrid smell permeated the small alley. Many residents stood still, their eyes glued to the disfigured second-floor apartment. They did not know what had happened inside, but the loss was clear to all. The peaceful night was torn apart by smoke and fire. And with that, a chilling question began to form. What really happened behind the closed doors of the Cashay Henderson apartment just before the fire broke out? Around 9 a.m. on February 26, 2023, fire trucks rushed into a quiet neighborhood in northwest Milwaukee. The second floor of a residential building was still smoking, its shattered windows revealing thick plumes of black smoke billowing out. Nearby residents, many still reeling from a sleepless night, gathered outside, their eyes glued to the chaotic scene before them. Firefighters immediately deployed hoses to extinguish the smoldering embers in the apartment. Once the fire was under control, they went inside to search. Amid the charred ruins, firefighters were surprised to find a body. Shortly after, the identity was confirmed. It was Cashay Henderson, 31, a woman who lived in the apartment. The discovery changed the situation immediately. What had initially been considered an accidental fire had turned into a particularly serious incident. Firefighters reported the incident to the center, and within minutes, police arrived and set up a security cordon around the building. The scene was completely sealed off, with no one allowed in or out except investigators. The first officers to enter the apartment recorded an unforgettable scene. All the furniture was destroyed, the walls were covered in soot, and the air still smelled of combustibles. These initial observations were quickly incorporated into the report, indicating that this was more than just an accidental fire. The case was then upgraded to a criminal case and transferred to specialized investigators. News of the discovery spread quickly throughout the city. Within hours, Cashay's friends and family were in the neighborhood. They stood behind police lines, their faces in shock as they watched their familiar apartment reduced to charred ruins. For Milwaukee's LGBTQ+ community, the news was a huge shock. Cashay was known as a sociable, cheerful woman who often brought positivity to those around her. Therefore, her passing in tragic circumstances left everyone heartbroken. The neighborhood was tense throughout the day. Many said they were still haunted by the sight of the red light that had been blazed through their windows just hours earlier. A few makeshift bouquets of flowers were left on the sidewalk, right next to the blockade, as a way to remember their neighbor, whom they saw every day. By late afternoon, the Milwaukee Police Department issued an official statement. The body found in the apartment was that of Cashay Henderson, and the case was being treated as a fatal arson. The announcement not only confirmed the firefighters' initial concerns, but also made the community aware that the morning's tragedy was more than a simple fire. On the afternoon of February 26, 2023, after the raging fire had been extinguished, the forensic team and Milwaukee investigators conducted a crime scene investigation at Cashay Henderson's apartment. The interior was almost completely burned out. The walls were stained black, the ceiling had partially collapsed, and the furniture was reduced to charred remains. The acrid smell of smoke still permeated the air, but amid the chaos, experts began to notice abnormalities. Cashay's body was quickly sent for an autopsy. The results, released later that day, shocked many. She had not died from fire or smoke inhalation, as initially believed. Her injuries indicated that she had died before the fire broke out. The time of death was determined to be between midnight on February 25 and early morning on February 26, just hours before neighbors noticed black smoke billowing from the apartment windows. This investigation immediately changed the nature of the incident. The fire was considered an accident and was upgraded to a murder case. Authorities sealed off the entire building and collected every piece of burnt wood, trace of smoke, and trace of liquid suspected to be a flammable substance. These details suggested that the fire was likely set intentionally, rather than randomly. Investigators also paid close attention to the area outside. The snow had clearly marked footprints leading away from the building in the early hours of the morning. In addition, Cashay's car, which was parked nearby, was also sealed for further examination. Every detail was carefully recorded, becoming an important piece in reconstructing what happened. As the autopsy results came in, the picture became clearer. Cashay Henderson had been dead before the fire started, and the fire was a cover-up to hide the truth. This finding not only strengthened the investigation, but also raised the big question for the entire city. Who took her away, and why did they choose to set the fire to cover up all traces? Shortly after the forensic report and crime scene results were released on February 26, 2023, the Milwaukee Police Department officially classified the case as a homicide. The investigation quickly focused on one prominent name, Cordell M. Howes, 33, a man with a criminal record. Clues leading to Cordell came not only from the system's records, but also from traces left in Cashay's car and images captured by security cameras. On March 1, 2023, police and federal agents found Cordell hiding in a suburban town dozens of miles from Milwaukee. The arrest was conducted secretly and neatly to avoid attracting attention. That same night, Cordell was escorted back to Milwaukee to assist in the investigation. In the interrogation room, Cordell initially appeared calm and denied all the accusations. He said that on the night of February 25, he had not been near Cashay's apartment and had been elsewhere. However, when pressed for details, his answers changed several times, contradicting his previous statements. At times, Cordell claimed to have been with friends, and at other times he said he had gone out alone. This inconsistency raised suspicions that he was trying to hide the truth. The investigators were not quick to jump to conclusions. They laid out the objective evidence on the table: footprints in the snow leading from the house to the main road, camera footage of a figure leaving at the same time, strange fingerprints in the victim's car that were compared and confirmed to belong to Cordell. Each piece of the puzzle strung together into a clear timeline, negating all the circumlocutions. During the search, Cordell's personal cell phone became a decisive factor. When examined, investigators discovered a video he had taken inside the apartment. The recording showed Cashay's body before the fire broke out, reinforcing the forensic results and confirming that the fire was started last. This was overwhelming evidence, invalidating any denials. Additionally, a witness claimed to have seen a man leaving the building in the early morning. When comparing the identification and time frame, this testimony completely matched the remaining evidence, from cameras to traces at the scene. Throughout March 2023, the police and the prosecutor's office worked closely to consolidate their case. Every detail was put together in order: autopsy results, crime scene reports, fingerprint analysis, CCTV footage, witness statements, and phone records. All of it formed a complete dossier, clearly showing that Cashay had been murdered before the apartment burned down, and that the arson was simply a way to destroy the evidence. The prosecutor stressed that this was not a case based on speculation, but was built on forensic science, surveillance technology, and witness testimony. In addition, Cordell's escape after the incident was also noted as an act of showing a sense of avoiding responsibility. By the end of March 2023, the official verdict was reached. Cordell M. Howes was charged with first-degree murder and arson. The complete case was forwarded to the court, clearing the way for further proceedings. In the Milwaukee community, especially those who knew Cashay, everyone followed the case's every move. For them, the gradual unraveling of justice was not only a relief to an individual, but also a testament to the power of investigative science and the perseverance of law enforcement. In June 2024, the Milwaukee County Courthouse opened the trial of Cordell M. Howes, a case that had been making headlines for more than a year. Dozens of reporters and residents lined up outside the courthouse early in the morning. The atmosphere was thick with tension. Everyone was waiting for the final answer to the fate of the 33-year-old man accused of taking the life of Cashay Henderson and setting it on fire to cover up the evidence. During days of testimony, prosecutors presented a strong case. From matching fingerprints in the victim's car, footprints in the snow, video footage shot by Cordell himself, to witness testimony of a figure leaving the building in the early morning hours of February 26, 2023.
Proves beyond a reasonable doubt that on February 26 of 2023, in the early morning hours, the defendant got a ride to Ms. Henderson's residence, shot her twice in the head, set her body on fire, took a video of her body before he did so, and then stole her property.
Some of it you might find disgusting, some of it you might find troubling. So again, focus on the direct portions of the questions. What has the state proven? Have they proven what they claim to the level beyond a reasonable doubt? Not guesswork, not speculation. What have they proven at the end?
Each detail was pieced together, forming an undeniable chain of evidence. In addition, forensic experts also confirmed that Cashay's death occurred before the apartment caught fire, clear evidence that the fire was only a cover-up. The defense tried to turn the situation around, emphasizing that Cordell had been under a lot of mental pressure and difficult circumstances. They pointed to the inconsistencies in the witness testimony and suggested that the video could be taken out of context. However, given the scientific data and objective assessments, that argument was not enough to convince the jury. On the final day of the trial, as prosecutors played the video found on Cordell's phone, many in the audience burst into tears. Cashay's friends and family hugged each other, their faces a mixture of grief and hope for justice. Not only the LGBTQ+ community in Milwaukee, but also ordinary people who knew Cashay were present, using their presence as a way to remember her and demand justice for her. As their deliberations ended, the jury retired to deliberate. Less than an hour later, they returned with a resounding verdict. Cordell Howes was guilty of first-degree murder, arson, and illegal possession of a weapon while a convicted felon. The verdict brought a deafening silence, then an explosion of sobs and sighs of relief. On November 25, 2024, the court officially announced the verdict. Cordell was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, with additional years for related crimes. The judge emphasized that the sentence was intended to send a clear message that justice will not tolerate cruel and calculated acts. The verdict closes a haunting chapter in Milwaukee's history, but the echoes linger. Cashay's friends brought her portrait to the courtroom, their eyes red but proud that the truth had finally been proven. For the LGBTQ+ community, this is not just justice for an individual, but also recognition of their value and presence in society. And so, nearly 2 years after that cold morning when smoke and flames billowed from the small apartment on a quiet street, justice has officially called for Cashay Henderson. But for those who loved and accompanied her, the loss remains raw, a void that no verdict can fill. The death of Cashay Henderson, which occurred on the morning of February 26, 2023, not only ended the life of an energetic 31-year-old woman, but also left an irreplaceable void in the hearts of those who knew her. Friends remember Cashay as someone who always knew how to make people laugh, an individual who lived authentically and was unabashedly supportive of the LGBTQ+ community around her. But her passing has once again exposed a harsh reality. Transgender women of color remain among the most vulnerable, often facing the dangers of social prejudice and a lack of safety in everyday life. The June 2024 trial and November 25, 2024 life sentence affirmed justice in the eyes of the law, but that is not enough to erase the pain or prevent similar tragedies in the future. Cashay's case serves as a reminder that justice does not stop at court decisions, but must also be nurtured by change from within the community, where people are recognized and appreciated for their true worth. The question that still echoes after the verdict is, when will society ensure that no one has to sacrifice their safety just to be true to themselves? It is a challenge for everyone to reflect and act, so that losses like that of Cashay Henderson will not be repeated.